All right, thanks everyone for joining our webinar. Welcome to today's session, Choosing the Right DMS for Your Law Firm. Before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items. All attendees are on mute. There will be a short Q&A at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions, feel free to submit them in the question box and we will answer them at the end of the session. If you don't have a chance to ask a question during the session, you're also welcome to email NetDocuments at info@netdocuments.com and we will be happy to follow up with you after the session. And with that, we'll get into our webinar. First of all, I'm Michelle. I'm from NetDocuments. I'll be moderating today. I'm excited to introduce you to Paul Perdue, our co-presenter. He's the CEO of Attorney Computer Systems, and Jerem Shook, the National Sales Manager at NetDocuments, who will also be co-presenting. And our agenda for today will cover the things that you can see listed on the screen. First, document storage versus document management, the different types of document management systems, how you know when your firm needs a document management system, how to mitigate challenges surrounding implementation, and then finally choosing the right document management system. And so with that, we'll start off with document storage versus legal document management, and I will turn it over to Paul.
Thank you, Michelle. There are a couple different classifications of document management systems. There are the ones that you saw early on, like Box and Dropbox. There are the ones that your copier company wants to sell you. And then there are legal document management systems. Not to say that your copier company doesn't represent a document management system, but a lot of them represent some very generic systems that aren't really legal in scope. And so there are a couple things that are really inherent in a good legal document management system. Number one is matter centricity. Now, if in order to incorporate matter centricity in any non-legal document management system, you kind of have to bake it in yourself. Kind of like you do on your X drive or your N drive on your network, where you set up a folder with the client and another folder with matters. You're doing all that yourself. There's nothing inherently built into the system to make that happen. Whereas in a good legal DMS, you're going to find a level of matter centricity already built in, already ready for you, with features that are really extend that functionality. Another one is email management. In a Dropbox situation, in a copier company selling a generic document management system situation, they're not really geared to storing email. They don't look at emails as documents. Documents are documents. Word, PDF, those are documents. Emails aren't documents, but they are. When my father was a patent attorney, and when I got into this business by being a high schooler that happened to be around in the late 70s when he bought his first computer, everything was done via mail. We didn't have email. And Tilly, who was his legal assistant forever, she would take the dictation, type it up, give it back to him, he'd review it, he'd give it back to her, and then it was all in her hands. She'd get it out the door, she'd put it in the right place. She'd put it in the chrono, she'd put it in the client file, and we were done. Now you got lawyers running around with these little phones. I say that like it's bad, only because technology is everywhere. And there is no more Tilly. There is no more anybody that's in there to help you get this to the right place. So email management is huge. And having tools that are built into Outlook, where lawyers are sending emails all day long, and having tools that take advantage of the fact that sometimes lawyers can be sending emails from other places, that's huge. Big part of a legal document management system. Document types and tagging. We do this all the time when we put in on that documents type situation. We put in doc types. And there are other things that we can tag documents with. Metadata is the nerd term for it, but it's stuff that gets attached to the document to help you find it later. Now, the obvious things are the client and the matter, and we talked about that with the matter centricity. Doc types are another example: email versus correspondence versus pleadings versus briefs versus motions, whatever the case may be. But there's all sorts of other tags that can be applied. What date was the agreement signed? Is it a final or a draft? Has it been filed? All these things can be attached to the document, and these are the things that we can tag to the document to be able to find it later. Jerem's going to give you a picture of what regular document management versus the out-of-the-box stuff. document storage versus document management.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So this is actually a question that I get quite a bit, is what's the difference between what I'm doing now with my folders on my computer or my server versus document management? Why would I, what's the difference there? Why do I need to even look at a document management system? So we wanted to touch real quickly on what those differences are. And the biggest thing that I see is that document storage is passive, right? It's very similar to like actual filing cabinet where you might store paper documents. So you go in there, you pull out a folder, you stick a document in it, stick it back in your filing cabinet, and you're done, right? It doesn't do anything for you. It's just a place to store your documents. And your folders on your computer or your server are the same way. You can stick your documents there, but then it doesn't really do much for you. And even the organization of that is all on your shoulders, right? You have to go in there and set up your folders, kind of like Paul mentioned, you'll set up folders and subfolders and subfolders and hope that everybody's doing it somewhat consistently and that you can find those documents later. So that's basically what document storage is, something that's static like that and just passive. So that could be, again, either your desktop, it could be a server or shared drive. It could be even like a Google Drive or a Dropbox. Those are all examples of just passive document storage. Whereas with a document management system, it's active storage, right? So it's doing things for you. Whenever you need a new matter created, you can create that in your practice management. It's automatically created in your document management system for you. It takes that step out. You don't have to rely on yourself or others at the firm to consistently set that up. The consistent structure is already there. All your different document types and tags, like Paul mentioned, are automatically there for you. It's not on your shoulders to go and create that. It's already there. You can right out the gate, start saving your documents using the template that's already created for you. Another huge piece is the version control. So, so many times we see just a bunch of different versions of the same document saved as different documents in a folder on a shared drive. And it's always got at the end, revision 1, revision 2, or version 3, version 4, or sometimes it'll say final version or final. No, really, this one's the final. I mean, I think most of us have probably run into that, right? So the version control in a document management system eliminates that for you. It allows you to seamlessly create a new version. It keeps track of those versions, allows you to put notes on or a description of what changes were made in that version. And it keeps track of that history for you. So you can see who created that version, when they created it, as well as, any changes that were made there and any description that's in it. So it gives you much more tools around that, much more robust system for keeping track of your versions, making sure you're sending the right version out to your client or to opposing counsel or whoever you're sending that to. The other thing that provides you is the ability to check in and out documents. So what that does is eliminates the possibility that two people are editing the same document at the same time, where everyone at the firm is working on the live version of the document and able to create versions from there. Whenever you open that, it checks it out to you, locks it from anybody else editing at the same time, and then you simply close that out to check it back in, and then someone else can go ahead and work on it. The other thing, then this is one of the most important things of a document management system, is indexing and searching. So using all of those different metadata tags like Paul mentioned, it will go in and organize your documents and index those in such a way that you can search those very quickly, based not only on the name of the document, but you can do a full text search and search the entire contents of the document. You can search for a motion, for example, across all your matters. Maybe there's a document from 4 or 5 years ago, a motion that you filed, you have another one that's very similar that you want to reuse that content. Rather than reinventing the wheel, simply go in and say, I want to search across all motions from all of my matters over the past 5 years, and it will bring those back to you, and you'll be able to find that very quickly, reuse that content. So again, your document management is doing things for you. It's helping you be more efficient, more effective, rather than just kind of sticking your documents somewhere. And the last piece I'll touch on real quick is having that automatic OCR built in. So when you have those documents that are paper documents, you scan them in, unless your scanner has OCR software built into it, those documents won't be searchable PDFs. So you'll want to have an OCR tool that goes in and makes those searchable. as well as your other image documents, so that when you run that search, not only is it bringing back your documents very quickly and helping you find what you need, but it's also making sure that you're returning all of your search results and there's not documents you're missing that because they're not searchable. So let's go ahead and talk about a little bit more about different types of document management systems.
Well, I'll take the first one. These are cloud versus on-prem. So we're talking here about things and how they apply in an on-prem versus a cloud base. So an on-prem is a piece of software that loads on your servers or on whether your server be in your offices or in the cloud, it still has to be maintained by you. And so there are two sides to this security: is who can get from outside your organization into your documents, and then the other is how can we protect those documents that need to be protected from other people within the organization being able to see them. The first, preventing people from getting in, that's really only as good as the level of infrastructure that's installed and the people that are managing it. So it's really all on your IT people, whether they be internal or external. Whereas a cloud-based system, that's all being controlled by the cloud provider. Now, I know that many people, most people think that their systems on-prem are very secure, but I would be hard-pressed to prove that they are more secure than NetDocuments. NetDocuments has, what is it, Jeremy? Is it 21 or 22 certifications for security right now? The latest is if you happen to be dealing with clients that are dealing with arms dealers, and they have a certain level of certification that you need to have in order to deal with that sort of a thing. But the very first one, or one of the very first, was HIPAA. I know many firms that don't even meet HIPAA standards for protecting documents on their on-prem solution to storing documents, whereas NetDocuments, out of the box, as soon as HIPAA compliance was introduced, they were there. Okay. The other is, how do you control who has access within the firm? You'll see over on the right, it says that the cloud-based system allows for individual permissions to be set, meaning we can say this person can access these documents, but these people can't. Very easy to maintain in a cloud-based document management system. Sometimes a little bit more difficult within an on-prem. A lot of times it's IT that has to control that. Jeremy, you want to talk about mobility?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on as far as mobility for an on-prem versus a cloud-based system. So one aspect of that is where you're able to work from, as far as, whether you're at home or in the office. And this is one of those things that right now hits home more than ever, right? With so many people trying to work from home. With an on-premises solution, again, that's at your office, on your servers. To get to that from home, you have to have some way to access that, right? So typically like a VPN, virtual private network, that you can use to log in and access that. So you're depending on another piece of software to get to your documents and everything there at your office, which can be marginally reliable sometimes, right? Although it does seem like it is improving. I have heard of a lot of issues of people being able to consistently access their documents from their office using a VPN. Whereas with the cloud-based system, you can natively access that. So whether you're at home, whether you're at the office, or on the beach somewhere, you can easily access those documents natively. So meaning you're not using another software to log into your server, you're accessing those directly through the cloud provider. The other aspect of that is even taking mobility a step further, I guess, being able to access your documents from any device that you want. So being able to pull it up on your phone, your iPad, those types of things, and having a native mobile app for those. So if you're like me, I don't typically go to like my banking website on my phone. I have an app for my bank that I'm going to use to log in. And then, cloud-based systems are no different, where you can have apps that allow you to pull up your documents directly from those devices, be able to work on those, save them back, send them out. So if you're on your way to the office, maybe you're on the train on the way in, and a client needs that document right now, you can just go ahead and send those out from your phone or your iPad, rather than having to wait till you get to the office. So those are a couple of the differences between an on-prem and a cloud-based system as far as the mobility aspect.
Let me talk about costs. No matter what you're doing, whether you're putting your documents on your server on a hard disk, or you're storing them in paper files, or doing what most people do, which is both, you're paying money. You're paying money, $50 to $75 per square foot just for the space to store the documents. You're paying for hardware. You're paying for keeping that hardware running. You're paying all sorts of costs to keep that happening when you're in an on-prem system. Whereas cloud, what you're doing is you're putting everything into the cloud. Now, you may still keep a hard copy, but we find more and more and more as people get stuff into their DMS, they're getting rid of those copies. So it's certainly the costs associated with the servers and the storage and the bandwidth and everything that you need to get to those documents internally goes out the window. You don't need it anymore with a cloud-based system. And for many people, a lot of that storage space goes out the window. Even if you've got off-site storage, you're still paying for it, and you're still paying to get it organized, and you're still paying to get it over there. So lots of costs involved with on-prem. Not that all of them go away with cloud-based, but certainly a good majority of the ones that have to do with server and storage and physical space. Sure.
Awesome. Yeah, and so along the lines of productivity, this is kind of an interesting one, over on an on-prem versus a cloud-based, right? Because you might think initially, well, an on-premises system can have, just the same productivity as a cloud-based system. But what we found with most on-prem systems is that they are limited as far as the user adoption. So typically they're somewhere between 50 to 65% of people that are consistently using the on-premises system, because they're only updated every so often, right? Typically every like 2 or 3 years, and then you got to go roll out the new version of that software. And so what ends up happening is people get frustrated with it because it's becoming outdated, and then they will start saving to their local desktop or to a shared drive or to some other location. And next thing you know, you've got documents kind of all over the place. Some may or may not have the email management piece built in as well. And so then you're tracking down emails, communication. And so that's really where you lose the productivity on an on-prem system, whereas a cloud-based system can be updated incrementally, right? Every couple weeks. And so that you're constantly getting those productivity gains as you go, and it's not just one big enhancement every few years. So it allows you to increase that productivity as you go. It encourages that user adoption, so you get up in the high 90s as far as user adoption, so that everybody's saving in the one centralized location and you're maximizing that productivity throughout the firm.
And last but not least is compliance, which kind of ties in with the first thing that I talked about, security. Even if you've got everything locked down exactly the way it needs to be to satisfy the HIPAA compliance requirements and any other compliance requirements that you need to satisfy, you have to prove that, usually every year. So you've got to, if you've got an on-prem system, you've got to prove to whoever, maybe it's your clients, maybe it's the insurance companies you do work for, maybe it could be anybody, as far as who wants to know that you're compliant. If you have gone through the effort to be compliant, you still got to prove it. And that's a huge cost, because it's something that just has to go on over and over and over again. And you have to have the same people that set up be able to audit that and provide that level of assurance. Whereas with a cloud-based system, it's entirely a situation where that is managed by the cloud provider. No compliance requirements on your part. Everything's handled by in this instance, NetDocuments.
Great, thank you both. Now that we've talked a little bit about the differences between cloud storage and document management, or document management and document storage, and different types of document management systems, we're going to talk a little bit about how you know when your firm needs document management. And with that, Jerem, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is another question that I get asked a lot is, do I really need a document management system? And it really comes down to, it depends. And so we wanted to talk about a few reasons why it may or may not be something that is a good fit for your firm. So one thing that I see a lot, we've got a lot of firms that, are just on a shared drive and it seems to have been working for a long time. And so they wonder, do I really need one? Or we have some that also use like an all-in-one system of practice management that has some document management built in. And typically what we find is that for an all-in-one system, it's more of your document storage, right? It's not really a document management system in most cases. It's more of a document storage, just like using a folder structure at the firm is more of document storage. And so that's where we have a lot of people reach out to us, is when they're finding that it's just not really cutting it. They want something more robust, a more robust solution. So they need it to do more for them than just give them a place to stick the documents. And so if you take a look at, kind of what you're doing now and you see things that are inefficient, maybe you're spending too much time trying to find documents that you may want to reuse as a template, or maybe it's taking too long to file your emails together with your other information. Maybe documents are getting lost because they're not consistently organized. Those are some of the reasons why you may want to start looking into a document management system, is when you need something more robust.
Scalability. Jeremy was talking about the documents that are all over. When we start with a good intentions, we're going to put these on the end drive, and we're going to create a client folder and a matter folder and folders to represent the doc types. But then this team, the litigation team, discovers they need certain other folders, so they start creating those, and the estate management, estate planning department adds some folders. And then we've got people putting things on their C drive and flash drives and putting them on their desktop. And the more unwieldy things get, the harder it is to scale. If you bring in a new employee and they need to know where the documents are and they learn net documents, you're done. If they need to know, well, when you're working for Bob, he puts everything on his desktop in a folder called Bob's Special Docs. But if you're working for Joanne, she puts her stuff not in the client matter folder, but in another folder that's in the same place, but under her, and you get the picture. Without some compliance, without some uniformity, without getting rid of the unwieldiness that Jeremy described, you have no scalability. And so a good document management system is always going to be much more scalable as the firm grows, as the number of clients grow, as the number of matters grow. I was putting in a document management system, probably one of the first ones I put in long ago, a decade ago. And the firm had gotten a reference from somebody else that had a similar system. And the reference had told this lady who was at a, let's say a 42 attorney firm, she said, "Oh, be glad you're doing this now. The longer you wait, the bigger you get, the harder it's going to be to do." And so what this firm had experienced was they recognized that they had a scalability problem, and they were solving it early on, rather than the firm that had done the recommending that said, yeah, be glad you're doing it now. They had discovered just the opposite, that they had gotten too big. It was too hard to move. It was too hard. They had already experienced scalability problems. So scalability is a huge part of any good, well-organized document management system. Jeremy?
Yeah, right along with that, I would say as your client list grows, so do your compliance and security needs. And so, some certain clients require different compliance measures and different security measures in place. And so having a legal document management system that has that security already built in, I mean, that can be a huge investment for a firm to have to put those measures in place, whereas legal document management system will already have it. So they can just go in and from day one inherit all of the different security and compliance that's already built in, which can help keep their clients happy, help with security audits that we're seeing more and more with different firms. But then it can also help you can use that in your marketing efforts as you go out to get new clients. You can show them, hey, here's all the things that we comply with, and so you can rest assured that your information, your documents are safe with us.
Right. And this last one gets also back to something Jeremy was talking about, where he was talking about the functionality that makes the document management system more than just a file storage system. I mean, there's two things that are central to a document management system. One is that you have a central repository to store your documents. Well, you already have that. no matter what you're doing, you have a central repository to store your documents. Whether people are really doing it, that's a whole other thing. But if you nodded and laughed and recognized any of the things that Jeremy or I were describing with versioning and matter centricity, all the things that the OCR, being able to search the PDFs, whether they be old or new, or something that somebody just dropped in and didn't realize you had to OCR. All of those things are what, if you're looking or craving those things, or you're nodding yes, yeah, we have a problem with versioning, we have a problem with this and that and the other thing, then that's right there a good sign that you need a legal document management system. Okay.
Thanks. Well, now let's talk about how you can have a successful migration, some of the challenges to implementation. And Paul, do you want to kick us off?
Sure do, because this is kind of what we do a lot of. We're an implementation and migration partner for NetDocuments. And so choosing somebody to help you do this, it's not a small choice. You want somebody that understands your firm and how you're doing things now, understands maybe where you're coming from, whether it be another DMS or from the file tree sort of storage methodology. You want to do this right, so you need to identify and find the right firm to do it for you, so you don't have to do it over. A couple jobs that we're working right now are for people that got implemented into a DMS, and some of their documents didn't come over, and we're kind of cleaning that up. So the partner is huge. But once you found a partner that you're comfortable with and that you have a good relationship with, or that you feel confident with, you need to identify the people in your firm, because it's a two-way street. We can't do this without thoroughly understanding how you do things, how you currently store things, how you have your security broken down, how you want your doc types set up, how you want your cabinets and your workspaces set up. These are all very important. And so it's not just us, it's you guys too, and you need to identify who those people are. One thing that I learned very early on, it was at a firm where we were putting in maybe 90 user DMS, and there was one person, she's always like this, she's a legal assistant, and she hates everything, hates everything, complains about it, hates it. And the administrator said, we're putting her on the team. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, no, watch. And all of a sudden, she's telling us what's wrong. We're acting on that. She feels validated. She feels involved and included. She turned out to be the biggest proponent for implementing document management system that the firm had. So stakeholders, identify them, and you may be surprised at who you identify. You need to look at your current system. How are things organized? What problems do you have? That's the huge thing. What are your problems? Because we can't fix the problems until we know what they are. We're pretty good at ferreting these things out, but the more information we bring, the better. Setting reasonable deadlines. And this, again, is a two-way street. We'll help you, or your implementation partner will help you set reasonable deadlines. But if you're not participating at the same level that the implementation partner is, then that can really pull that deadline back. You can miss a deadline. You can have to push the deadline back if we're not getting the right things from you. So set reasonable deadlines, and then skipping down, communicate early and often. In other words, let's meet every week. Let's make sure we're moving forward to meet that reasonable deadline. It's not just let's have a quick meeting and then they'll push the magic button and everything will happen. It's more of a, is this right? Okay, now is this right? Okay, great. Now maybe we would suggest this. And those happen in those weekly meetings. You have to, of course, get buy-in from key decision makers and users. Hopefully that's already happened if you've purchased the software. I mean, it's hard to buy software without having buy-in, but it's even harder to implement it without having buy-in. So if you've managed to get by the buying process without getting the right buy-in from the key decision makers, then we need to absolutely have it during the integration and implementation process. And keep everything positive. It's not that we can't pull in 100 documents because they're not in the right location. It's that we can pull in 1.2 million documents. So management on down, keeping the attitude and the mood and the situation, a positive situation, works well on both sides.
Thank you, Paul. So now let's talk about how do you choose the right one? How do you choose the right document management system? Jerem, do you want to talk us through some of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like we've kind of been talking about, there's a lot of different options out there. I think for law firms, it definitely makes sense to get one that's legal specific rather than just getting a generic document management platform. But we wanted to talk a little more specifically about what are some questions we can ask about the document management system specifically, and then also about the provider. And so just a few questions here to ask. One would be, what tools does the document management system integrate with, right? So most firms are going to have some sort of a practice management or case management software. So you'll want to find out, does the document management system you're looking at integrate with that practice management system as well as maybe other tools that you're using, metadata scrubbers or those type of things. You want to find a document management system that integrates with the things that you're using now, or if you're looking to change those, find one that integrates with whatever you would like to switch to. The next one would be, what security features does the platform provide? This is especially important to ask when you're looking at cloud storage providers. So with on-premises, typically the security kind of rests on you at the firm, but with cloud storage providers, they're going to offer some level of security with that. But what you wanted to clarify there is the entire platform certified to meet these security measures, or is it just the data centers where the documents are stored? So there's a definite distinction there. I mean, pretty much all data centers are going to meet a lot of these compliance requirements, but for the company and the data centers to meet those is a little bit harder. So that's one thing that you're going to want to check on. The next one would be, is how much mobility does that product provide? So like we talked earlier, does it have the mobile apps that you need to be able to access that from any device natively or not? So pretty simple question there, but definitely one that can be important, especially if you're one that's on the go quite a bit. Next one would be, is how does that platform organize and search your files? Is it still going to kind of be on the firm to go in and create a lot of those folders and files, or is it going to help me do that more automatically? And then this is another key point, is how does this help me collaborate not only internally with stakeholders internally, but also externally as well, right? So once we've got the documents and the information that we need there, how do we communicate that with others outside the firm? And are there tools built into the platform so we don't have to keep moving documents from our platform to a Dropbox or a OneDrive or something and then back into the platform again? So you'll want to look for those collaboration tools being built into the system. And then also look at what other services can be added on, what other tools that for some firms are going to be a huge deal and give you huge productivity gains. For others, maybe not as much, and so they're optional services that could be added there. So those are definitely some things to ask about when you're looking at different document management systems. Some other things to ask about the provider would be, how do you handle the migration process? Is that something that's done internally with the provider themselves? Do they use third parties like Paul's company to do those migrations, or how is that handled, and how do you walk us through that? Because that's going to be a key piece of your success with the document management system, is making sure that it's implemented and that your documents are migrated correctly initially. Also ask to review their cloud services agreement, make sure that it meets with your requirements and that it's going to provide the security and compliance that you need and meet up to your standards. And then the couple other questions we would ask about, like references, right? How many customers have left from your document management system to one of your main competitors? And then can you connect me with 5 customers who are actively using the same solution that we're looking at buying, right? So some DMS providers are going to have multiple different versions of their software, whether that's an on-premises, a hosted, or a cloud. So make sure that when you get references that you're asking for ones that are using the exact same platform that you would be using. So just a few key tips there as you're looking at different options, and some questions to ask to make sure you're getting the best fit for your firm.
Great, thank you. And Paul, let's turn it over to you to talk about making a case.
I'm not going to read all these because everybody's already doing that, but I picked my 4 favorite. One is consistency. It's this one. It's the one in the middle at the top. As your firm struggles to keep document organization consistent, because certainly a legal DMS is going to add that layer of consistency. Do you need to check documents out? This is huge. I don't know how many times I've had people come from the file-based system where, like 2 months ago, Bob took a document home, and while he was home, I pulled it up and edited it and saved it, and then Bob came and saved his changes on top of mine. That's an example of where you need checkout, because if you're taking your documents out of the network, out of the place that you've got now, and people are changing them and bringing them back and causing trouble by doing that, that's a good one. OCRing is huge. Of course, NetDocuments has the ability to OCR everything that gets dropped into it, so it's a no-brainer, as opposed to having to rely on an attorney that's dropping a PDF right into the DMS, having to remember to OCR it, or else you're not going to be able to search it. So that ability to OCR things in the background, just as a part of the process automatically, that's huge. And then of course versioning. Versioning is huge for all law firms. I don't think I know of many lawyers that don't version at least a part of the time, and I know some that version absolutely everything they do. So being able to have those things are huge. The other four are huge, and I could probably think of a dozen more. My favorite is, when's the last time somebody dragged this matter into that client by mistake and then couldn't find it? So a lot of things that could be happening now in your environment that we could solve with a good legal DMS.
Absolutely. So a few things to remember along those lines is look at your firm specifically, right? Each firm is different. And so look at the things that are working well for your firm and maybe the things that could improve, and make sure that it has those things that you need to improve for your firm specifically. So for some firms, filing your emails together with your other documents may be a big deal, and maybe it's a pain to do that right now. And so you'd want to make sure that you have those tools available to be able to quickly and easily save your email in with your other documents. Maybe keeping track of versions is the biggest issue, or maybe finding older documents is the issue. So take kind of what's most important for your firm specifically, and then make sure that the document management features meet those needs and are able to help you become more efficient in those things as you're looking at the different options available. Also looking at, from a management perspective, which tools are going to help you find the information that you need regarding what's going on with your documents and managing your firm. And then another thing along the lines of security. So, we've talked about kind of the overall security of the document management system, but this one focuses more on within specific matters, right? You may have a matter that's a very sensitive matter and you want it limited just to a specific person or group of people within that, within the firm. And so that's another thing you'll want to look at is, does the document management system give you that ability to get that granular as far as not only specific matters, but even specific documents? And then the collaboration tools that we just spoke about as well, making sure that you're able to collaborate and communicate effectively within the firm as well as with clients and others outside the firm.
What do you do once it's done? Well, it's not done. When we implement and we have all those meetings ahead of time, what we're trying to find out is what would have happened if we just put it in and set people loose, because we're trying to find those problem workflows and work them out. We're trying to find out exactly how we want to do doc types and make sure they're right. I tell people that when you leave my training session, when we're doing training during the rollout, you will go back to your desk and you will sit here and feel that you have absorbed everything and you're understanding everything, and you are. But as soon as you get back to your desk, it's as if everything drains out of your body and you sit there and you're like, well, what did he say? And how do I do this? The most important time is not, okay, maybe a better way to say it is the second most important time is after the implementation. The first is that it be implemented properly and that we think of as many things as we can. But that's where you can find your superstars, your super users that can then help the other people that are struggling. That's where you can continue to train your team. And we even have something that we call walking the floor when we're doing an on-site implementation, where we walk around looking for people that are struggling after having gotten back to their desks, because that's where the real learning takes place. But then also keep optimizing. Just because we think we got everything right in the implementation doesn't mean that you won't discover things that, well, how do we do this? We never thought about this. What's the best way to do it? Well, okay, so it's not just well, let's just do it this way and be done with. No, well, let's figure out the best way to do it. So keep optimizing, keep learning, keep training, and find those people that are going to help you do that in the firm so that you don't have to keep paying us.
Awesome. So there's a few myths that we wanted to kind of talk through and kind of give some thoughts on. So first one is, I've heard DMS is expensive. Is it worth the cost? So again, I would say it kind of depends on the firm, but in most cases, we found that there's a really good return on investment as far as the productivity that you're able to gain. So again, you're not just storing your documents anymore, and that's one thing that you kind of the way you have to look at it is right now, especially if you're just using a shared drive, it could be very inexpensive to do that right now. But where are you losing time as far as searching for documents or going back and trying to track down a version that was sent out incorrectly or those kind of things. So you just kind of have to look at your overall structure of how you have it right now, what is costing you now, and what the opportunity costs are as far as the productivity that you're losing right now to kind of judge for yourself if it's worth the cost. But most firms that we work with have found that it's definitely worth that cost and helps them actually be more efficient, and they get a great return on their investment. The other would be that there's a large learning curve to using a document management system, and adoption can be low. And so that's one that I touched on a little bit earlier, and kind of where this myth probably comes from is that with your traditional on-premises systems, there has been some low adoption because they haven't been able to keep up the pace of innovation like a cloud system can. And so one of our focuses is meeting you where you are, meaning that we don't want to try to force you into a mold of doing something different. We want to help you keep doing things the way that you're doing them, but do them in a more efficient manner so that you can realize the benefits there. So we don't want to change everything you're doing. We just want to help improve the things that you're doing now. And that really helps eliminate that learning curve because you're not making a huge switch to doing something different. And that in turn helps that adoption be really high and further, increases the productivity gains there.
This one is my favorite. I've heard the installation process can be complex and time consuming. It can. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is stuff that we've got to get right, and there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of moving people, and there's a lot of coordination, and that is what makes the choice of an implementation partner huge. You need somebody that is going to be able to bring this down to a level where you can communicate back and forth, and you can get your views expressed, you can get your needs expressed, and then the implementation partner can take it. The better the implementation partner, the easier and less time consuming the implementation is. But that's not to say that it doesn't take time. If we're going to do a migration of your documents from an existing DMS or from your file structure, we need to be able to pull logs, we need to be able to analyze that, we need to be able to figure out how we're going to get these documents in the right way, we need to be able to do test migrations, meet with your people, look at stuff. The longer time frame we have, the better off we are. Now that doesn't mean just make it a huge long time frame so that there can be little communication that's spread out. What I really mean is, it's going to take about anywhere from, I think the quickest implementation and migration we've ever done is about 3 weeks, but that's very quick. I'd say a good implementation timeline would be 4 to 8 weeks, maybe a little longer, depending on how you want to do things, how far you want to customize things, and how many documents you have to pull in. We can get by with something else like Dropbox. Well, yes, I guess you can. But the security needs alone, I mean, Dropbox alone is not HIPAA compliant. I had a firm, the same firm where the naysayer was brought into the implementation committee to be able to change her mind. That same firm had somebody almost got fired for putting medical records in Dropbox because it's just not secure. It's not HIPAA compliant. So yes, you can get by with something else. You have been. So yeah, you can. But if you're seeing resolution to any of your pains and the things we're talking about, if you're nodding your head as we talk about some of these features, then there is a place to go to get out of that situation.
Awesome. So just kind of to summarize, when you're looking at a document management versus, whatever you're doing outside of a document management system, is just to remember that a document management system is more than document storage. That is providing tools to help you be efficient. That's helping you keep your information secure. We know that law firms, their document management system, or rather the documents themselves, are central to legal work, right? And so that's kind of one of your most important assets. So you definitely want to make sure those are secure, but then you also want to have the tools around that to be able to manage those efficiently, to make your day as productive as possible, and to help you eliminate anything that may be sucking your time and keeping you from getting new clients and servicing the clients that you already have. So definitely encourage you to at least take a look at document management options and see if it may be a good fit for your firm.
What do you think, Sharon? Maybe they should look at NetDocuments. Do you think that's a good place to start?
I mean, it's an all right solution, I'd say.
Yeah, it works. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Jerem. Thank you for those that attended. We received a number of questions. Many of them have to do with specific integrations that people are looking for, or things that are specific to your organization, your firm. Due to the time, we'll follow up. NetDocuments will follow up with you independently on some of those specific questions. And we will let everyone get back to their day. We know you guys are all very busy. And so thank you for attending. Watch for the recording to come through via email, and have a wonderful day. Thank you for attending.
Thanks, Michelle.
Everyone.